was the sort of tune played on a coaching horn to warn you of the coach and four speeding towards you along the road. Our horn stands 43 inches high and stretches from floor to ceiling of the display. It's a straight, valveless instrument in an unknown key and was made from copper around 1880. This horn was carried by the guardian of the mail coach in the 18th and 19th centuries, and you might have heard it on the arrival and departure of the coach at Blandford's Crown Hotel. The guardian could play several messages, but the main one was blunt. "Get out of the way!" Blandford is a musical town today, following a long tradition of music making and appreciation, and a cartoon on our printed panel shows a bewigged Regency musician playing a clarinet. Charles Barfoot was a Blandford music teacher from Whitecliff Mill Street, and his name is stamped on our classical clarinet in C, made around 1830. Barfoot also sold instruments stamped with his name, and Barfoot clarinets are in collections at Edinburgh University and the Royal College of Music. Our clarinet has 6 keys and is made from pale, honey-coloured boxwood with ivory bandings, and it stands 27 inches high. Boxwood is a dense, slow-growing wood, but less dense than the African blackwood used to make modern clarinets. The Barfoot has a wooden mouthpiece and a smaller, softer reed than a modern instrument. Sadly, both mouthpiece and reed are missing, so the clarinet can't be played, but it gave such a light and intimate sound that an 18th century concert reviewer raved. "It is capable of imitating a human voice with so soft and lovely a tone that nobody with a heart can resist it." Perhaps that reviewer would have fainted dead away at the sound of a modern clarinet. On the floor at the back of the display is a zither, which evolved in the late 18th century as a folk music instrument in Bavaria and Austria. The name comes from the German rendering of the Greek cithara, from which the modern word guitar also derives. The dark brown zither consists of a shallow wooden box, across which strings are stretched between pegs. It is played horizontally on a tabletop or the player's lap, and fingers and a plectrum are used to pluck the strings. Our zither has a rounded side facing away from the player, which makes it a Salzburg zither, and it was made by J. Halsfontner, who was working in Munich in the mid-19th century. To the back left of our exhibit is a late Georgian or possibly Regency instrument called a serpent. The serpent is made from a wooden tube covered with black leather and has a brass key about halfway down and a scalloped brass trim around the sound hole. The instrument was first used in the 16th century to strengthen the sound of a choir, but it began to appear in mid-18th century military bands and orchestras. But as valved brass instruments became widespread, the serpent was lost under their superior volume, so its use died out. The serpent's design didn't die out completely, as our next instrument evolved from it in the 19th century with the rise of brass instruments. Standing to the far left of the cabinet is an ophicleide, and its name comes from the Greek orphis for snake and kleis for keys. About 3.5 foot high, this serpent has only 2 curves. The 8-inch wide bell is at the top, then the straight brass tube narrows as it descends, ending up at about 2 inches at the bottom, where a U-bend connects it to another 2-inch tube, which climbs to about half the height of the first, narrowing to 1.5 inches wide. The second curve was in the brass neck and mouthpiece, of which both are missing. The ophicleide was a bass instrument much used in military and town bands. It was finally superseded by valved brass instruments. In 1856, Blandford's Cornopian band under the baton of Robert Ayres played God Save the Queen as Lady Smith turned the first turf for the new railway at Ward's Drove, Blandford St Mary, and 4 years later they played for the ball in the Corn Exchange, celebrating the first train into the Blandford St Mary station. In our exhibit is a black and white photo of 14 musicians with their instruments. This is the Blandford Brass Band, who had evidently raised their game so much that in 1862 they competed with the likes of the Black Dyke Mills Band in the National Brass Band competition at Crystal Palace and took 4th prize. A year later, they reached the top of their tree on Tuesday, the 24th of July, 1863, under their bandmaster, Robert Ayres, when they took 1st prize at Crystal Palace with their performance of Verdi's difficult piece, La Forza del Destino. The Andantino is now well known as the theme to the film Jean de Florette and the Stella advert. A photo of a beautiful cup made in aluminium gold is included in our exhibit, and this was one of the 3 prizes awarded to the Blandford Band, and which amounted to about £100. Besides the cup, they received an electroplated circular contrabass and a cheque for £30, perhaps totalling the equivalent of hundreds of pounds today. One band member, Mr. T. Hunt, was voted Best Solo Baritone Horn Player in the competition and received an electroplated and gilt baritone horn as his prize. According to the Yeovil Western Flying Post, Blandford's Fife and Drum Band played in the train, bringing the victorious musicians back from London. The band stepped out of the train and were presented with a banner proclaiming them the champion band of England. The Blandford Fife and Drum Band then accompanied them back to Blandford, where people cheered, threw their hats in the air, and the church bells rang out. In a strange foretaste to clapping for exhausted nurses during the first COVID lockdown, the Flying Post finished its article like this: "Cheering is all very well, but it costs nothing. If the people of Blandford appreciate such well-merited success and wish to keep up the efficiency of their band, let them liberally supply the so-called sinews of war." Presumably Victorians speak for "put your money where your mouth is." Behind the band is the banner they were presented with, and each side of them is an urn of flowers, and this photo may have been taken at the Crown Hotel after their victorious entry to Blandford. Today, the Stour Valley Band has played under the baton of Tim Stankus for many events in and around Blandford for several decades, and it is this town band playing extracts from La Forza del Destino for our audio file.